You know what? I'm pretty bummed because I just tried to record this tutorial and I made it pretty far in, and then, things happened and now I have to record it again. Why does that bum me? Not really because of the wasted time, although that is frustrating. It's because I can't give a genuine narration anymore because I've already done it. So it kind of feels like everything I'm doing is like something that was rehearsed. So I'll try to keep it fresh. First thing you might notice, or you might not notice because your life doesn't revolve around my tutorials. And you know what? That's perfectly okay. I don't want my life to revolve around my tutorials either. So it'd be weird if your life revolved around them. You're going to notice camera quality. I wasn't really about that. I used a shit webcam for nearly 4 years now. And I think I have done videos with this camera. Check this out, by the way. That's called autofocus. You like that? I went to a DSLR, but then I'm like, why? Who cares? The reason I'm going back to a DSLR, even though webcam is easier, is because I'm making a course about particle physics for a little company. You might have heard of them, CG Cookie. And I want to make the video quality good so it feels like people think I care more, which I do. I mean, that's why I got the DSLR. Okay, anyways. You clicked on this video, you saw the title, you saw the thumbnail, and I claimed that we would make not procedural footprints, but parallax-based footprints. What does that mean? Well, if you want footprints in your scene, like somebody's walking through the snow or the mud or whatever, like they left an indent with their foot, normally what you would have to do is model a footprint, which in itself is hard. But then you'd need to dig into the ground, make it concave so that the footprint makes an impression, and you have to do that for every single footprint. Instead, what I propose is that we do it in a parallax-based method. It's all in the material. The depth is fake, so we get to put this decal or image, in a sense, on top of the surface, but we still get the depth. And by the way, we're going to do that. We're not going to do this from scratch. I'm going to use a Blender Market parallax shader to build off of. It is not a sponsored video, which I need to say, because the sole purpose of YouTube channels is to sell and make money. I'm not making money off of this. I'm spending money on this. We're going to build off of that. And I was thinking about showing you the final product in the beginning, but why? We're going to make it. We'll find out in the end. So here is how we are going to do it. I'm going to change to my camera. Like I said, I'm using a Blender Market product, and we're also going to need an image of a footprint. I'm not making that myself. That will be Google Images. And what I did is I basically typed in parallax, which will give you some things you might have even heard of, like KitOps or Decal Machine. What I set out to do is to find the cheapest version of this that has the features I want, and I stumbled across PLX, which came out 4 years ago. I'm resurrecting it from... Nobody's buying this anymore, except me. What this is it is a material node-based parallax depth maker. So you can see it actually looks like these bricks have depth. They do not. It's a single polygon. And here's even a better illustration. So this Lego is literally just a elongated cube or rectangular prism. Everything you're seeing with these cylinders and insets and outsets and all this are fake. They're not there. So, that's what we're going to be using. I purchased this, and you can see that on my desktop over here. I got the 2.0 beta, which I guess never made it through beta since this was 4 years ago. We're going to be using that. And the second thing I want to get is an image of a footprint that we are going to download. Now, luckily for us, there's a lot of options. You can get an actual footprint. You can get a boot footprint. I'm just going to get a boot. Because originally I used this for a different project where I had them walking through the snow. So we got some iStock, some copyright issues there, as we know. I guess we want to find one that's a bit ambiguous as to whether or not we can use it. That will be fun. Maybe Pixabay, I believe, is free. I think that's the point. So let's see. Save image as. Nope. That's a WebP file. I guess I have to go to their website and download it as a high-ish quality PNG. Okay. And I'm actually going to need to do some modifications to this footprint, one of which is finding out where the frick it is. Show in folder. Okay, it's in downloads. This needs a modification because if I was to apply this as is, it would just be like very high contrast. Like there would be depth and then there wouldn't right on the border here. I want there to be kind of like a soft impression as if this person dipped through the mud or through the snow or whatever. So I'm just going to do a bit of post-processing. In other words, open your favorite image editing software. That's right, get MS Paint out. I'm going to bring this in. I guess I need to think about whether or not we want this to be a 1:1 aspect ratio. I'll think about that. But for sure, I want to take the image and make it a bit taller. So I'm going to make the width like 1100. And the reason I'm doing that, even though it seemed to do... Oh, no, that was the width. Is because, by the way, that it's touching the very tip is why I did that. Okay, so let's try that again. Image, canvas size. The height should be 2200, and now this should work. Let's center our element, and like I said, I want there to be a bit of a soft fall off, so I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to blur it using a Gaussian blur. And I guess before we do that, the layer should be full to the image. So we're going to do a Gaussian blur, increase that until this looks nice and soft, but you can still get an impression of what's going on. This is going to be our height map, but because it's a height map, what I want to do is I want to invert this. So white means elevated, or I guess we can just use the alpha for this. Basically, I want the background to be black, the foreground to be white. And what I'm thinking is we can just use the alpha channel for that. So either way, I'm going to make this a 1:1 image. So I'm going to make it 2200 by 2200. So now it's a nice... Why do I keep messing that up? Canvas size. I make that 2200. Why not work? Okay, that should work. There we go. I don't know. I do not know what I did wrong there. So I'm going to center our footprint. You can think of this as our decal. And I'm just going to rely on the alpha channel to give us height. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm going to export this as footprint height map. And now we're getting into the exciting stuff. How are we going to give this depth without giving it depth? That's why it's so exciting. Let's export this. Okay. We are going to open up Blender. By the way, what I've opened right now is the thing I bought. And really all it does... Here's the node group. It has settings. You go into it, and you think, wow, it's made up of a smaller node group. Nope. That's what he wants you to think. Zoom out. There's a monstrosity over here. Go into that node group, and you can see it all basically boils down to a single image texture. This is the height or depth map we're going to input, and that is going to drive everything else. But ultimately, all this does is it makes normal coordinates and I guess vector coordinates for other stuff. Anyways, what I'm going to do is, again, you could import this into a different blend file. I'm just going to overwrite this plainly. I'm going to bring in our image texture. And by the way, this technique can be for anything. I just think footprints make sense. So here is, let's do this with look dev. Let's look at the alpha. Here is our footprint. Again, the reason the color is just black is because our footprint's black. Okay, this is why we're going to use the alpha channel. So here is our footprint. There are some artifacts, but you know what? What can you do? By the way you fix that, I believe, is when you do your Gaussian, you mess with like the filter or something like that. If it's an issue, we can go back and just swap it. We are going to use this to drive our parallax. So let's see. I'm going to go into the node groups, and then on image texture, I'm going to bring in our footprint height map. And again, we are going to use the alpha channel. So the alpha channel is going to feed into the math and the math and the math. And hopefully when I now view this coordinate system, we get something like this. Now, the interesting thing about this is you see, first of all, it's inverted, whatever. But you can see as I go around this, you can see that it's actually updating to the perspective and it has depth. Okay, what does that mean? It means we're getting this for free. So let's actually visualize this using some lighting. And I guess I want to emphasize this point. How do you do a HDRI? I totally forgot. For some reason, this is connected to the volume. Couldn't tell you why. Okay, so now we got our lighting. I don't know if that was like already in the blend file or if that's something I did. Couldn't tell you. But now you can see, again, this is what I want to stress is that this is a single polygon, okay? But when I look around this, it has a sense of depth. And of course, I'm going to take this and kind of like invert it. But this is what we're going to do to kind of cheat this kind of thing. So let's see what we do to invert this. Maybe there's a nice control. Maybe we need to flip it, okay? So here we have controls for this. Can I just make it negative 0.55? No. I think probably the most intuitive way, since I cannot figure out how to do this with the node group, is let's just invert the initial texture. So we have our alpha. I'm just going to invert it. The idea is, yeah, it's going to flip it. Okay. Problem solving live. That's what we like. Okay. So what we have now is a footprint that looks like it's more of an impression into here. And no matter what angle we get, especially if we zoom in, you can see it really has like the impression of depth, and that is going to carry over with whatever material I make. So if I make this thing rough and like red, it's going to be there. So you can make it snow, whatever. And let's see. So that is our normal coordinates. And we also have our vector coordinates, which seem to just be, I guess slightly modified UVs. Okay, that's good to know. Either way, that is our footprint. And now the question is, how do I like generate a foot path using this depth? Okay, let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a surface. It's going to be bigger, maybe even bigger. And I'm just going to subdivide it. The reason I'm doing this is I'm just going to make a basic terrain, high resolution. To edit this, I'm going to use proportional editing. How do I bring this up? Enable proportional editing. There we go. So there can be some hills here, maybe some low points, high points, whatever you think looks good. I'm not going to get too in the weeds with this, just to show that this can be done on any terrain. So here we have a terrain, and what I want to do basically is I want to map our footprint. I misnamed these. Okay, so I'm going to take the footprint. Again, I'm going to shrink wrap it to a target, to the ground, and now you can see that it's working. You could either do it to the nearest surface point, or I believe we can just project downwards. That's the idea. I want to project on the z-axis downwards. I think we just apply negative, and there you go. You can see it's projected on the surface, but you can't really see it because it's literally intersecting the surface. So then all you have to do is add a bit of offset here. So I'm going to do something like that. There we go. And now you can see we have this footprint that we can move around, and it's going to basically map to the terrain no matter how we scale it, rotate it, whatever. However, you're still going to see a bit of shadowing here because at the end this is a plane on top of this. So to correct this, I'm just going to make it transparent where it needs to be transparent. So I'm going to bring in our texture again. This could be any footprint. It could be a dog print. It could be a hand print. I'm going to bring in our height map, which again has this alpha. And this alpha we're going to use to guide the alpha of the BSDF. Basically what that means is make the plane transparent. And to get a bit more control over this, you can throw this through a color ramp and like bring up the contrast and maybe like ease it. So we still have the depth of the footprint, but without all the background. Okay. And the reason everything else disappeared, it seems, is because we're using like the same material for all this. So the footprint is going to be called parallax. And then the ground, I'm going to make sure to copy the BSDF. The reason I'm doing that is I want to make sure that these blend together in some sense. So I'm going to view that. Where's our ground, boy? Okay, I guess that was some kind of glitch in the shading editor. But either way, now you can see the point is we have our surface, which you can light it in any direction, and it actually has an impression of a footprint. Again, cool thing about this is since it's guided by a parallax base map, I wonder why it's not showing up in the shading workspace. If anybody knows, comment so the other people can know it for themselves. But I'm going to just do this in the layout since that seems to work. Cool thing about this is it's controllable, so I can control the depth of the footprint, basically how much of an impression is it making. So now it has a lot of depth, and now it has a little. And you can also move the mid-level to say how high was it to begin with. Okay, so I'm going to make it half intensity, which seems to be a good place to be. And then the idea is, now that we have our footprint, which I think, yes, parallaxing in the right direction, we could literally just create our like footpath. So I like duplicate. Let me make this on median point. I duplicate, I rotate, and then for these ones, you can invert it. So you get your footprints, but that seems like a hassle, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to instance these using geometry nodes. Very simple. So I'm going to make a Bezier curve, which I cannot see. There we go. So this is going to be our footprint path. And what I want to do with this is I'm going to make it a geonode. I think what this is doing, by the way, is it's using like an older version of Blender from when like the person made this, so there's some weird glitches, even though I'm using 4.0. Couldn't tell you. Okay, I'm going to use a curve. I'm going to resample it so it has more geo. Okay, so you can see as I make this slower, it loses or gains geometry. So let's say we want, this is going to be the number of footprints. Let's say we want 15 footprints. We then instance on every point on the curve. Obviously, we are going to instance our footprint. So now we have a bunch of footprints. And then the final thing to do, so now you can see, by the way, to make sure our projection is happening correctly, I think we need to move the curve up so that they can then project down. Okay, let's do that. So I'm going to transform our curve to make it taller. Just like that. And do we want this as relative? Makes you think. I guess we can do the projection right in GeoNode, so I'm going to get rid of this shrink wrap. So what you're going to see now is we have our army of footprints. Okay. First of all, it's kind of confusing looking at it like this. First of all, I want to make sure that they're oriented the right way, because right now they're kind of like not oriented towards the curve. So I'm going to take the curve tangent. You can't just plug this into rotation. It's going to do some weird stuff. You have to turn that into a rotation quantity, and that should do it. Play around with these, see what you like. I believe it is this one, but that's facing the wrong way. So it's the y-axis, and then let's have fewer of these. I know it looks confusing. There we go. Now it's a little easier to see what we got going on. So here are my army of footprints. Fine, but now they're not projecting anymore. That's also fine, because we can do our projections super easily in GeoNode. So I'm going to realize these instances. Reason being is now we have all our geometry. If I didn't do this, it'd just be a bunch of instances without the geo. And then we just project it downwards. So I'm going to set position. I'm going to modify where this thing is by ray casting, by shooting rays downwards towards our ground surface. So the target is going to be the ground, which I think we make relative. And then the ray direction is -1 on the z, because we're going downwards. -1 on the z. And I project this here. And now you can see it's contouring to the surface, but there's going to be an issue. Just like before, it's like almost perfect, but it's like slightly intersecting, as you can see right here. So we need to give it a bit of a nudge up. Lots of ways you can do this, but the most obvious is to then offset after you move this by the hit normal. So the direction normal to the surface away from the surface. I'm going to do that by less. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to scale this effect. Let's just go into full screen. I'm going to scale this effect by like 2%. Okay? So now you can see it really looks like it's on the surface, and these have depth. Again, is the main takeaway. Can I see this in Look Dev? I cannot remember. You can kind of see it in Look Dev. But now we got our footprints in here, and then the question is, how do we make our complementary footprints that go the other way? Just to give you a taste of how to do that, we just take this transformed curve that looks like that. I want to kind of offset it so that there's almost like two curves going up parallel to each other. To do that, you could literally just move it, or I think the correct way to do this is let's offset this. I'm going to set position by the normal question mark. Let's see. I'm going to offset by the curve normal. So here's before and after. That seems to be correct. And then I think we literally just kind of redo everything we have here. So to do that, I'm just going to make this a node group so that I can, well, I guess I want to connect this here so it has an output. I'm going to make all of this a node group. I'm going to duplicate it, give it to this other curve, join these together, and now we have two footprints. Great. You can also control the offset, like how much these are separated, by taking, just like we did with the ray casting, you take the curve normal and scale it. So this is going to be our offset. And then to kind of reverse the orientation of this, I'm just going to make this a new node group. I believe all I want to do is I want to flip them, invert them, right? So maybe this isn't the best way to do it, but what I would do is we kind of already did this earlier in the tutorial. I would invert it on the x-axis, the scale. Although, oh wait, whoops, you want to do this on the footprint. I'm going to take our footprint parallax geometry and flip it. Okay? And let's see, does that work? Looks a little weird. But I think that's correct. If this like did something to the normals, we can just do a normal inversion. Yep, that seemed to fix it. And now we have two footprints. Again, you want to do it so they're offset by one, right? So you take a step on the right, and then you move forward on the left, right, left, almost like a zigzag. I'm not going to talk about how to do that. But the main takeaway is now we have our footprint generator, and you can literally just control the path of how this person walked, which I think is super cool. And of course, the cool thing about this is it barely uses any geometry and still has the depth though. Okay, so as for whether or not I'm going to make this file available on Patreon, you can check the description. I just need to check as to whether or not I can do it because it's using a node group another guy made. But once I buy the product, it's mine? Well, we'll find out. So check in the description if it's on Patreon. Either way, Patreon is where I put files. That's basically what's going on. 4 years worth of files. So if you want to get a stupid amount of resources, like probably maybe like a couple $100 worth. And yeah, maybe I'm inflating it a little, but honestly, a couple $100 worth for $5. That's where you want to do it. And that also funds the tutorial aspect of what I do. But don't get it twisted. Technically, I can do this for free, right? I use free. I mean, the camera costs money, but if I already own a computer, there's not much preventing me from doing it. This is just a nice bonus that makes me prioritize it a bit more because I'm trying to just kind of do the tutorials when I feel like it, which is good. That's a good thing. I feel like there's too much of a grind that I also felt. So I think it's good to just kind of like pick and choose when. But have I been like down here the entire time? Hopefully I was standing up straight. That is the tutorial.